Before I even begin quoting this chapter, let me make something perfectly clear. In a nation where people are free to practice any religion they like, and the law requires everyone to acquire a certain standard of education, and the government provides a means for people to do so free of charge, i.e. public school, that must be done without adhering to any particular religion. If public school teaches that Christianity is the one true religion, that discriminates against non-Christians. If a private school wants to do this, one can always argue that if you don't like it, go to public school. I still think it's unacceptable because I think all schools should follow the same curriculum. A high school diploma should mean the same thing regardless of which school it came from. In practice, I know this isn't the case, but it should be. And it can't be if different schools promote different religious beliefs. But anyway, the idea here is that if public school has a religious bias, then that means the government is discriminating against those with different religious beliefs. The only way to avoid this is for public school to be secular. This does not mean that it should promote atheism. It means it should remain neutral with regards to religion. Many atheist activists use science as a facade by which to smuggle atheism into our public classrooms, science and otherwise. It's not about smuggling atheism in, it's about openly, overtly kicking religion out from where it doesn't belong. Public school should be secular. This is accomplished by various methods, from making atheistic statements in textbooks that have nothing to do with science. Yeah, a few examples are brought up, but they have nothing to do with atheism and everything to do with science because they deal with the theory of evolution. To attempts to dictate the rules of academia. Such as... what? If you teach outdated, disproved ideas and refuse to take reality into account, then you shouldn't be taken seriously, and you certainly shouldn't be allowed to teach at serious universities. I think that sounds perfectly reasonable, and by the way, it's not something that comes from atheists specifically. This is a rule that everyone wants in academia. This is a short chapter that consists mainly of mind quotes, many of which are not even commented on. I'm just gonna move on. Chapter 10 is just more mind quotes. Basically, it comes down to something like science should not be allowed to discuss a sequence of events because that would be just telling a story, and that's not what science is supposed to do, or something like that. I can sum up my entire reaction to Chapter 10 as follows. Taking into consideration just about any and every form of health, mental, emotional, physical, and even societal, theists are healthier and happier than atheists. Not true. This hypothesis was falsified in 2005 by Gregory S. Paul. Basically, he found that when the US was compared to other prosperous, less religious nations, the US has higher rates of homicide, infant mortality, STDs, teen pregnancies, and teen abortions per capita. Many studies are cited as evidence in the next section. Translation: many data points are cherry-picked and quotes are mined. If you want to cite a study as evidence, you need to actually do better than to present just one data point or one quote that happens to support your case. I don't even know what conclusion the author of the article drew. Atheism and charity. Atheists both in the USA and London collected hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds during a time of developing worldwide recession, not in order to help anyone in need, but in order to purchase bus ads and billboards to advertise just how clever they consider themselves, as opposed to religious people who collected tons of money to give to professional child molesters and pay people to lie to Africans about how to prevent AIDS. See, I can play this game too. I'm ignoring the mind quotes that follow. Some have nothing to do with atheism, but compare conservatives and liberals. That's a completely separate issue. Atheism and suicide. Nothing but cherry-picked quotes here. No actual points are made, and the fact is that nothing suggests that atheists have a higher suicide rate than theists. Based on Paul's article, it looks like it has more to do with nationality than religion. The US is in the middle of the scale. Adult mortality. Mariano, make points. Don't just drop quotes. Actually address them. According to Paul, Americans have a fairly poor life expectancy compared to people in other prosperous but less religious countries. Religiosity does not appear to be a significant factor here. Now, let's look at infant mortality, shall we? No? Why not, Mariano? Cause of death. The quote used here suggests that people who attend religious activities have slightly better health than those who don't. This has more to do with participating in social activities than with those activities having something to do with religion. Again, Paul's article suggests that life expectancy has very little to do with religion, as the US is pretty low on the scale, but not the lowest. Attitudes toward abortion. Atheist bioethicist Peter Singer is too humane to eat a hamburger and advocates giving rights to great apes, but has no qualms about infanticide. Abortion is not infanticide. Infanticide implies killing an infant, a child. Abortion is terminating a pregnancy. Interestingly, even the Bible makes it clear that abortion, even against the woman's will, is not murder. See Exodus 21:22. Besides, evidently, the highly religious US has higher abortion rates than less religious countries. Again, see Paul's article. Christmas and happiness. More quotes. Even if it's true that religious people are happier, and I'm not convinced that this is actually the case, so what? Drunks are happier than sober people. Atheism and superstition. Enough with the mind quotes already! Yes, there are atheists who are superstitious, scientifically illiterate, even stupid. I've already been over this. Atheism and society. It's finally time to address Paul's article by complaining about the fact that it doesn't show what it doesn't claim to show. It doesn't include nations that are worse off than the US. So what? The point of the article was to test the claim that religion necessarily leads to a better society, as measured by rates of homicide, STDs, teen pregnancy, abortions, infant mortality, and suicide, as well as life expectancy. Atheists claim that atheist, secularist societies are superior in every way. No, not necessarily. Paul's article only looks at the criteria brought up in it. It doesn't make any claims about other criteria. In order for the author's bold claims against religious commitment contributing to society to hold true, he would have to refute the hundreds of volumes that have proven otherwise. From discussions on parenting and fatherhood to mental and physical health, the weight of empirical evidence is against Paul's assertions. Religious commitment has notably positive effects on the individual and collective levels of human society. Right, so the US has lower rates of homicide, STDs, teen pregnancy, abortion, infant mortality, and suicide, and greater life expectancy than Sweden? Oh, right, no it doesn't. It scores worse on all those points. Maybe you should actually read the article before criticizing it? Ever thought about that? And those hundreds of volumes, where are they? However, one need only look at the quality of life of people who have lived or live in states based on atheism to see that atheism is no basis for a just, caring, prosperous, secure society. Think about the various staunchly atheistic communist states such as Albania, Soviet Russia, North Korea, Pol Pot's Cambodia, etc. Or we could think of Nazi Germany. None of these states were based on atheism. Nazi Germany wasn't even an atheistic state, but I guess it qualifies as a secular state compared to the present-day US. I noticed that no democratic secular nations are included. Look, I'm not saying, and neither is Paul, that all secular countries are better off in every way than all religious countries. But the claim Paul tested was, again, that religion necessarily implies a better society. Comparing the US with even one less religious country and finding that that country scored better would falsify the claim. See, this is why Paul doesn't have to include every nation. If he had, he still wouldn't find that the US scored better overall than Australia, Canada, Denmark, Great Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Ireland, Japan, Switzerland, Norway, Portugal, Austria, Spain, Italy, Sweden, and New Zealand. Even if the US comes in at number 18, it still follows that the 17 that scored better are more secular. Atheism and honesty. Atheism has no moral imperative for honesty, so it's not surprising that atheists figure prominently in fraud and deception, although it is difficult to find statistics on this issue. I've been over morality already, but I'm not surprised that it's difficult to find statistics to support this issue. Ever wondered why, Mariano? Think about it. The only example of a dishonest freethinker Mariano can bring up is Ernst Haeckel. I'll grant him that one. Now, I wonder, can we come up with an example of a dishonest fundamentalist Christian? Oh, that's right, all of them. And the evidence is right there on CMI's website. The statement of faith is an admission that nothing can change their minds. Hell, even if God himself turns out to be real and pops up in front of them and says, dude, Genesis is just allegory, don't take it literally, Darwin was right, they still wouldn't change their minds. When you refuse to acknowledge the possibility that you're wrong, you cannot defend your position honestly. All fundamentalists are necessarily dishonest. Incarceration. Here, Mariano quotes a British article where it stated that atheists are vastly underrepresented among the prison population, only 0.2%. However, a total of 31.6% of the prisoners claim to have no religion, and of course Mariano seems to think this means they're also atheists, thus making atheists overrepresented instead. It's possible to believe in gods but not be religious. Deists come to mind. Maybe that's what they mean, I don't know. You'll have to ask them. What I do know is that they didn't check the box for atheist or agnostic, so to claim that they are atheists is blatantly dishonest. Atheism, marriage, and divorce. Finally, Mariano cites criticism of an article showing that atheists have lower divorce rates than theists. One point of criticism is that 4,000 people is an insufficient sample size. I fail to see why, since the criticism grants an accurate representation of the population. The other major point of criticism is that many atheists don't get married, choosing instead just to cohabit. And that's true, but irrelevant to the subject of divorce. It's possible that atheists are more likely to break up from relationships than theists, but this is completely unsupported as we're never informed of how often theists break up prior to getting married. We're also never told how many are stuck in unhappy marriages because their religious beliefs won't let them get divorced. To round this part off, let me just say that even if atheists were these really miserable people and atheistic societies were completely dysfunctional, that still wouldn't indicate in any way that a God exists. It's a completely separate issue. This chapter is a non sequitur.